I would say that we help more people with divorce and child custody cases than anybody in the state of Utah at this point, which is pretty major, going from absolutely zero to where we are now.
Hello and welcome to the Attorney Post, where we bring you the inside baseball scoop from top legal experts across the country. I'm your host, Justin West.
All right. Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Attorney Post, where we discuss what's going on in various facets of the law with attorneys at the top of their game to help you navigate the ins and outs of the various legal fields and jurisdictions. Because, as I always say, if you don't know your rights, you don't have any. Today, I am pleased to be joined by Marco Brown. He runs the law firm Brown Family Law out in Utah. How are you doing today, Marco?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me on.
I'm glad to have you. As always, we're going to jump over and take a look at your site. And we're going to talk about this because Marco actually has two sites. He's currently utdivorceattorney.com, link in the description below as always. But he's actually migrating to Brown Family Law because it sounds like he's going to be expanding beyond the borders of Utah in the near future. We'll talk about that when we talk about his legal journey moving forward. Before we get started, as always, I do like to read from a couple of our sponsors. And our first sponsor today is going to be Groove Funnels. If you love spending $5,000 building a new website and you love paying $69, $79, $89 a month to host a platform that allows you to sell products to your potential clients or customers, then by all means, keep doing whatever it is you're doing. But if you're like me, you hate that. And that's why I personally recommend Groove Pages, the all-in-one brand new sales funnel website platform from internet marketing legend Mike Filsaime. Visit theattorneypost.com/groove to learn more and to sign up for free and build a complete website at no cost, really for free. There literally is no cost, and they help you build up, I believe it's up to 3 fully functioning websites. Again, just go to theattorneypost.groove. They have a huge list of apps for the platform that basically turns it into a webinar platform, an affiliate platform, or almost anything you can imagine. It can replace nearly every single platform out there. And again, the base product, the base functionality of Groove Pages is free. Visit theattorneypost.com/groove. Our second sponsor is Rocket SEO from hundreds of customers. If you're a business owner or a law firm owner, you know that being on page 1 of Google is important, but maybe you're afraid to work with a search engine optimization company because you know that SEO is oftentimes expensive and slow. Well, it doesn't have to be, not anymore. Rocket SEO from hundreds of customers forces you to page 1 of Google safely and legally through the power of the news media. Rocket SEO utilizes national news media campaigns across the gamut of news sites that simply rank instantly. With Rocket SEO, you can boost your website's ranking in Google in 1 week or less with a simple system that leverages the power of major media companies, news sites, and network affiliates of ABC, NBC, CBS, and Fox, as well as local news sources from the Boston Herald to the Sacramento Bee and all stops in between across the United States and even internationally to put you on page 1 of Google over and over and over again, usually in under a week and oftentimes 2, 3, or even 4 times for dozens of different keywords. To learn more, visit hundredsofcustomers.com/rocket. That's hundredsofcustomers.com/rocket. All right. Well, Marco, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Yeah,
awesome.
Still here.
Still here. Well, thank you for meeting with me. Marco is, I believe, originally from Alaska. He spent some time in Italy, and he now resides in Salt Lake City, where he runs the law firm that bears his name, Brown Family Law. He is married. He's got 3 kids, if I'm not mistaken. And he runs a law firm that specializes solely on family law. And he actually, according to, I believe, his website, claims he helps more people through divorce than any other law firm in Utah. So, Marco, my first question to you, as always, is what did I miss?
Oh, man. So, yeah, I grew up in Alaska. Calling it Alaska is missing the point slightly. I grew up in a little tiny village called Cold Bay. It's on the Aleutian Peninsula that no one's ever heard of. It's the part of Alaska that juts out toward Japan and Russia. There's a little arm with a whole bunch of islands on it. I lived out there. My dad ran a salmon hatchery. My mom was an air traffic controller. And I just hunted and fished and played with my dogs when I was a kid. It was a great place to grow up. And then eventually you have to move on from that. So my parents kind of retired. My dad retired from the state. We moved in Anchorage, went to high school. Didn't really like high school, actually. So I never graduated. I left early, got my GED, and then went to college. After the first about year and a half of college, I decided to take time off, and I lived in Italy for a couple of years. Then and that was a great experience. I still love Italy to this day. I'm what I call an Italophile. I absolutely dig it. I think about Italian food and Italian people all the time. I go back 2-3 times a year. It's how I deal with my stress. So it is my happy place. And I'm just glad that I had the opportunity when I was younger to go over there. So get back from that, graduate from college, marry my wife, and then we've kind of been around since then. But I went to law school, and then my wife got her doctorate, right around that same time. Came back here to Utah so she could get her doctorate, and then I opened up the law firm in 2010, and that's an entirely different story. But that's kind of how that happened. I did work for a big firm before I opened my own law firm as a 50-60 person shop. And it was a terrible experience. I just absolutely hated it. I don't do well in situations like that, coming to find out. I'm a terrible employee. So I did that for about 2 years, and it was just awful. I didn't smile for 3 months at one point. My wife was really worried about me. So I quit. And I thought, all right, it's 2010. We're in the middle of this like major recession, right? It's the Great Recession. So I'll open a law firm, and that should be fun because I'm not that bright a guy. So I thought, all right, well, whatever. And thankfully it took, right? Really, really hard to do. I look back on that now and I think, I can't believe that actually happened, that this actually took. But, served clients really, really well, did everything I could in the beginning, made lots and lots of mistakes, in the sense that I'm not a business owner. I was not a business owner at that point. So getting paid was really tough, doing all these things. But I just tried to serve my clients really well in my cases and keep at it. And I did, and then figured some things out. And we have grown, we've grown quite a bit. Now we help more people than pretty much, I would say that we help more people than with divorce and child custody cases than anybody in the state of Utah at this point, which is pretty major, going from absolutely zero to where we are now.
Yeah, and that's just in a 12-year span too. I mean, obviously you guys must be doing something right. I was noticing, I believe you have about 300 reviews online as well. So that
333, I think, as of this morning on Google.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think that's the magic number. So, and I'm a firm believer in reviews as well. So 100%, that's very good. And it's a 4.8 rating out of 5. So clearly you're doing something right. It's hard to maintain that high rating.
4.8, man. Yeah, it's getting to 4.9, it would take like another 150 5-star reviews, and I swear.
Oh, the weighted average. That's how it is. So let me ask you this. What got you into law actually, before I do that, I do want to ask you that question, but tell me this, give me the pitch for your firm. Obviously we've got a little bit already, but if I was stuck with you in an elevator for 30 seconds or so, maybe it's a long ride. We got about a minute. And I said, hey, Marco, what do you do? Tell me the pitch for your firm. Who do you really serve? Who are your ideal clients? Where are they located? How do they find you?
Yeah, so what we do is we remove the fear of divorce, because people who are getting divorced are just afraid, and that's totally understandable because attorneys don't really give them that much information. They keep information from them. So we remove the fear of divorce by helping educate people, and we maximize the time people get with their kids and then maximize their money. So that's really the pitch, because you fight about two things in divorce. You fight about kids and you fight about money. So we're here to maximize the time with your children, so you can influence them as much as possible. And we're here to maximize your money. Okay. And then as for the people that we serve, the ideal client, if we're talking about an ideal client, because we serve all sorts of people, but an ideal client would be somebody with kids. They've been married, they have kids, they have a house, they have some retirement, gone to college or completed college, because we're expensive. And I make no bones about that. We do one thing and we do it exceptionally well, and we're going to do it better than everybody else, and you're going to pay for that. So it's expensive stuff. And if you have kids, you're going to pay for it. If you have a house, if you have, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 in retirement plus equity in the house, you're going to pay what we ask you to pay to get the best service that you can, and to secure yourself and your family as you move through the divorce process or the child custody process.
Well, and I imagine a lot of times what people might skimp on in the upfront, if they want to go with someone who's not super expensive, they're going
Yep.
to pay for in the long run, because you're not going to get the expertise and the care that you should get. So,
Yeah,
when it comes to
exactly.
certain
Exactly.
areas, you don't shy away from that. You got to know that there's a price, but you're paying for expertise, you're paying for experience, you're paying for the end result. I can find a
Yeah.
guy, I can find a guy who can redo my kitchen for $500. I don't think I'm going to like the results.
Yeah. I mean, if you want to go with an attorney who doesn't value you and doesn't charge for their work, doesn't charge that much for their work, that means that they don't value you or your family that much. Okay.
Mhm.
But we do. We're going to charge you for this and we're going to give you excellent service. We're going to communicate with you all the time. We're going to do everything we can. And then we're going to charge you for it.
Yeah, no, I mean that makes sense. It's cut and dry, and clearly, again, you guys are doing something right with the 4.8 rating that you got there. That's awesome. So let me ask you this: why law? Were you one of those kids who always knew, growing up? I know you skipped over high school and went right to college, but did you know law was your ultimate destination, or is that something you kind of stumbled into? And then, of all the areas of law you can go into, why family law?
So when I was a kid, my grandmother was a professor. So she had a PhD and she was a professor before women really did stuff like that. And she influenced me a lot. She's the smartest woman I have ever met. She's dead now, but she's the smartest woman I had ever met. Read incredibly fast, was an amazing thinker, just amazing human being. And she influenced me a lot in the sense that I always knew, because of her example and because of the example she gave my dad, that I would get a professional degree. I didn't know if that was going to be an MBA or a PhD or a JD and become an attorney, but I always knew that that would happen for me. And then as I grew up in adolescence and then early adulthood, it seemed like being a lawyer was the thing that fit in my head. I mean, I could think through problems. I could think through arguments is what it comes down to. I could think through arguments and I could reach their logical conclusions very, very quickly. And I could work out like all their permutations in my own head as I was going through and working out the argument. And I realized that that's what lawyers did. Like I just kind of knew that's how they did things. And then I was always kind of a jerk enough to be a lawyer, because you have to be a good litigator, you have to have some jerk in you, right? And I had that. Sorry, one second. My computer. Oh, there we go. Okay. So I had that and it just made sense in my brain. Now I toyed with other things. I was a physics major when I first started at BYU, and then changed to psychology because I was going to be a clinical psychologist, which is what my grandmother was. But then I realized after I graduated that that was not my thing, and I just needed to become a lawyer because that was the thing that worked in my head the best. So that's how I became a lawyer. And then how I got into family law, when we came back here in 2010, I had absolutely nothing. I started with zero. I loaned myself money. My wife and I loaned us money, and I started this thing. And I just took everything that came in the door. Okay,
Mhm.
anything and everything, because I didn't do family law before when I was at the big firm. So I just took everything. And I had a friend who came in. Her husband had cheated on her. She needed a divorce and said, "Hey, can you help me?" And I thought, yeah, I need money, so I can help you. So I stayed up until about 3 o'clock the night before we met and boned up on Utah divorce law as much as I possibly could. And then she paid me the next day. I helped her with the case. I really liked it in the sense that I got her a good result and I felt good about it. And I helped her and her family. So I thought, oh, I kind of like this. And then as time went on, there were just more and more people that came in the door for child custody and divorce cases. Then I figured out I was really good at it. I mean, I enjoyed it. My personality worked, that I could help these people and not kind of get emotionally involved, so I could be objective about it, but I could do really good work for them. I enjoyed it. And when you figure out that you're very good at something, it's a lot easier to stick with it and to do it all the time. So after a little bit, I figured, all right, I'm just going to go all in on this thing. And then I've just done family law ever since, to the point now that if somebody came to me and said, "Hey, could you help me with a DUI or a criminal charge?" Like, I know kind of sort of how that system works, but I really don't. Like I'm such a specialist in this one thing that I can't do other areas of law. I would just be absolutely worthless in them. right?
Mhm.
Like I know divorce, like a brain surgeon knows the brain, but I
Yeah.
know absolutely nothing about any other part of the body, as it were. Like brain surgeons don't know podiatry, right? They don't know feet,
Yeah.
and I don't know anything outside of divorce.
Gotcha. Well, I mean, again, you kind of stumble into things sometimes, and then you specialize, and before you know it, clearly you're the expert in the field. So that's awesome. So let me ask you this: clearly, for the last couple of years, we've been under the pandemic. Different people have different feelings on the issue. I don't want to get political necessarily, but I'm curious because I've talked to a lot of attorneys, and I know that it's affected different attorneys in different ways. How has the rise and the fall of the pandemic, which is hopefully more or less beyond us now, we'll see, how has it affected your practice of law? How has it affected your relationship with your clients? How has it affected your day-to-day activities and when you go to court?
So my family and I were actually in Italy. We were in Sicily when COVID broke. So if everybody remembers, the first thing that really scares us in the West, because he had China, but they never really shared accurate information about it. So it makes its way to Italy. And it's in a region called Lombardy, which is up in the north and near Milan. 10% of people are dying from COVID at this point. Now, it turns out that 10% of people are dying because they were all old Italians, like 81, 85 years old, who had emphysema or lung cancer or something like that, because that age, in that age in Italy, you smoked like chimneys, okay?
Yeah.
So these people were dying, but we didn't know that. And we were all scared out of our minds. They were about to close down the borders. So we got the last flight out of Italy back to the United States. Then Italy locks down and Western Europe locks down. And then the United States locked down about 2 weeks after that. So that's March of 2020. And at that point, like no one is doing anything at all. And that happens in Utah. We had the 2 weeks to flatten the curve, and then we let people come out of their houses again. And immediately upon people coming out of their houses again in April, like numbers shoot way up. So we'd always been here with divorces and child custody cases because we were pretty well situated in the market. We had done good work for our clients, and then it like went way up here, okay, for a period of time, probably until August, September, or something like that. The numbers are really, really elevated because it turns out that when you don't like your spouse and you have to spend literally all day, every day with them, that is very bad. So we had a whole bunch of people getting divorced, and then it kind of levels off. But it leveled off high for us because, again, we were well situated in the market. We'd advertised well, we'd taken care of our people. And it just meant that we have, we're up here now where we used to be down here. So for us, the pandemic didn't really do much of anything. It just elevated what we were already doing and allowed us to take more market share and help more people.
Gotcha. Did you ever have to zoom into any court hearings or depositions or anything like that?
Yeah, that actually just ended the first part of May. So they shut down the court system pretty hard in Utah, and the courts were not terribly well equipped to do virtual hearings. We'd always been able to do some telephone hearings, and not really video, but some telephone hearings. So they had to, the IT departments of the court had to figure this out very, very quickly. Otherwise, like it was just going to come to a standstill for a year.
Yeah.
So we did a lot of telephone hearings. And they finally figured out the video. So we did video as well. And they allowed us to come back into court for some things over the last 2 years, but not really. In May, they just said, all right, everybody's back in court. So there's this unfortunate, the last 2 years, the unfortunate thing is there's a huge backlog of cases because what they did is they put off everything, and then they had to take the cases that were the most pressing and get those back into court first in jury trials. So they're criminal trials, really. So all these divorce cases and divorce trials they would otherwise have didn't really happen because they had to prioritize all the other cases before us, which just meant that we had to negotiate really, really hard for our clients and get those cases done outside of court, which is essentially what we've been doing for the last 2 years.
Gotcha. So it sounds like the pandemic, I don't want to say it was a blessing to anybody, but it sounds like you found yourself positioned in such a way to really kind of benefit from it and grow. And we were talking just briefly in the pre-roll, but you said that you are expanding now, potentially beyond the bounds of Utah. So tell our listeners a little bit about that. Obviously, right now you guys serve people within your state, within Utah, but you're going to be expanding. Where are you expanding to, and how quickly is that happening?
Yeah, so we're on 90th South in Salt Lake City, or Sandy is the city, but we serve people all over Utah, and we always have. We've had cases in every district and every courthouse in Utah. And one of the nice things about now is that with the video, we can actually help people in St. George, we can help people in Logan, we can do all these things, and we don't have to travel 5 hours to do it, which saves our clients a lot of money. But yeah, we've grown here, and we have 8 attorneys now. So we've gone from literally 0 to 8 attorneys. We're going to expand into Arizona. My folks live in Arizona, and Arizona is a very interesting market and a big place with some very good competitors down there, but they're very nice people as well. And I just thought, okay, as we expand, where's the first place? Phoenix, Arizona, Mesa, Chandler, that area is where we're going to do it first. So that's in the works right now, which is why we're switching over the website. So it's utdivorceattorney.com right now, and you can always go to that and it'll just get redirected. But we're switching over to brownfamilylaw.com because that's our name. And we changed that. It used to be Brown Law, but we changed it to Brown Family Law. So we can take that corporate name and then go into other states, and we won't ever have any problems. So we are designing everything so we can go into multiple states pretty quickly. Arizona will be the first. Not sure after that exactly, but probably Denver, probably Albuquerque, just in the Intermountain West, because I want to be able to actually fly to the office, meet with the attorney, make sure that, quality control, do all of those things, and then be able to fly home to my family. Because if I'm gone too long, I'm going to need me for my own divorce. And I don't really want to do that.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Well, it sounds like you have some other attorneys on retainer, but God willing, you won't need them.
Exactly.
So let me ask you this. Are there any weird or idiosyncrasies that you found, for instance, in Arizona law that differ from Utah law when it comes to practicing family law?
Yeah, so Utah is what's called an equitable division of the assets and debt state. And equity usually means 50%, but it doesn't necessarily mean 50%. And Arizona is a Sun Belt state, which means that they're community property, which almost uniformly dictates a 50-50 split. So it's about 95% the same, the analysis, but there's 5% that's different, especially when it comes to businesses that are owned by spouses. That is a very different analysis between Arizona and Utah. So that will be interesting. But when we go down to Arizona, we'll pick up a really good Arizona attorney in the beginning and kind of flesh out exactly how things need to go down in Arizona, what the law is. But we'll pick somebody up that knows that. And then the procedure is also very different. So Arizona, they really push you toward trial from kind of day one that you file your case. And in Utah, we don't have that type of system. In Utah, we take care of our own, and we don't really involve the courts very much. So when we get a case, we're almost always going to negotiation right up front, because when you negotiate, you get to be the master of your own domain, right? There's no judge that's telling you exactly what you need to do with your kids. And these judges don't, they have lots and lots of cases, right? They don't know you. They're never going to remember you. They're just going to make some decision about you and walk away. But in mediation, you can craft an agreement that really suits the needs of your family and your life. Whereas in trial, you're not really able to do that. But in Arizona, so that's the Utah way of doing it. In Arizona, it's much more geared toward, let's get them into the trial really quick so we can kind of move these cases along. So that'll be a very interesting kind of procedure to figure out and see exactly how we're going to handle that. We're still working through that as a law firm, how we want to do that in Arizona, but I'm going to make a much bigger push to, I think, change that culture down there and really get into the mediation and get that done as quickly as possible. Because I tend to think that just leads to better results for our clients. And I want to do that as much as we can, no matter what state we're in.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Well, I wish you the best of luck in that expansion too. And it sounds like you're gonna be. It feels like it has to be feeling like walking on a tightrope at sometimes, but I'm sure, especially as you build up your office in Arizona and you've got attorneys that specialize there, it matters. As long as they know what they're doing, that's really the important part.
Yeah.
So let me ask you
Yeah.
this: you've spent 12 years growing a very successful practice. We all know that nobody bats 1,000, and so I'm sure there've been a few times in your legal journey that you've had what I'm sure yourself would consider to be a failure. My longtime listeners know I'm a firm believer that failure is only ever a failure if you just walk away from it. You don't learn anything, right? But if you learn something, then it's just a slow burn win that it doesn't realize right away. So can you tell our listeners, Marco, about a time in your practice of law where you had a major setback, you had a failure, something didn't go your way, maybe it was huge, maybe it felt like life altering or detrimental, maybe it didn't. But then what did you learn from that, and how did you carry that forward to help out your clients?
Yeah. So I think my first probably 5 or 6 years, they weren't failures. Like, I worked really very hard for my clients. And in 2015, I went from zero. I came to a new state, to Utah. I started with no clients. I loaned myself money. I didn't know anybody here. I had no network. And I went from that to winning Family Law Lawyer of the Year, Divorce Lawyer of the Year in 2015. And I was voted that was voted on by my peers in the Bar Association. I don't put a lot of stock in awards or anything like that, because I could go buy 1,000. I can literally go buy 100 awards right now, attorney awards. So I don't put any stock in them. But this one I won on the vote from my colleagues, and this meant a ton to me. So I obviously had done something right, and I'm the youngest attorney ever to win that in the state of Utah still. So I'd done something right, but I'd also done a lot of things wrong, like a tremendous amount of things wrong. I had taken care of my clients, but I was not a business person at this point. So I didn't get paid. I didn't figure out how to invoice clients. I was scared to ask them for money. So I just, I didn't get paid. I got paid like, I think 50 cents on the dollar. So I'd bill 2 hours and I'd maybe collect 1 hour, right?
Yeah.
And that put a tremendous amount of pressure on me to work even more hours than I was working. And I had 112 open case files, at this point, which is way too many. Don't ever do that sort of thing. So it was all on me. I had some people helping me, but really, like, I was going to every mediation. I was going to every court hearing. I was doing all this stuff, and it was just too much. So I did not do well in the business aspect of things. I let myself get run down. And I didn't take care of myself physically. I didn't take care of myself spiritually. I didn't take care of myself and my family emotionally. So in that aspect, I failed for about 5 or 6 years. And I really wish I had done it differently. I'm not the type of guy that looks back and says, no, I'm glad I did it this way because it brought me to where I am now. I'm like, no, I wish I'd never done any of that. That was horrid. So yeah, that was probably my biggest failure, was just not figuring out the business of law side of things in the beginning. Because if I figured out the business of law, I'd be much further ahead than I am right now, and I would have helped many, many more people that I've helped at this point.
Gotcha. Oh, it makes perfect sense. And it's something that is not a very natural skill in a lot of ways. The basics of entrepreneurship, I think, are innate, but the higher level stuff, the hiring stuff, the paperwork that goes beyond it, especially the legal aspects that aren't divorce, those are all things that are big headaches. I'm a big fan. Actually, I think I might have it sitting on my bookshelf back behind me. There's a guy named Joshua Kaufman who wrote a book called the Personal MBA or something like that. And I read that early on, and I thought that was a really good read. He kind of walks through the business side of everything. It's yay thick. I think he turned it into a podcast as well. But I don't have any formal training either. As an entrepreneur, I can say that is something that's rough. So, well, let me ask you this then. I'm sure sometimes you hit home runs as well. And we don't want to fixate on the negative, especially again, again, 333 glowing reviews of your company. Clearly, you've done something right. Can you tell our listeners, Marco, about one of the times that you're most proud of? You can be as specific or as non-specific as you feel like you need to be, but what's one of the feather in your cap, so to speak? You know, one of the things you look back on in your practice of law that just makes you proud, makes you happy that you do what you do.
Oh, let's do a couple of them here. So one is a particular case, and I'm changing things around so that
That's fine.
no one can really tell which case I'm talking about here. But I remember a particular case. It was a very bad case, and I was hired by a dad to help with a really tough situation, and the other attorney was just horrible. Had instructed his client to lie and do all these things, and I was able to get that client on the stand. I'm compressing a lot of time here, but I'm able to get that client on the stand. And I still remember, this is my favorite part of being an attorney, is cross-examination. I love cross-examination. So I'm cross-examining this woman, and I just get my hooks in to her. And I remember and she deserved it. Don't get mad at me because I did what I did. She deserved every part of this. I beat her up for hours on the stand, just excoriated her, took her apart limb from limb, and she deserved every little bit of it because she put their kids in serious jeopardy. And it was my job to ensure that that never happened again, and that my client was able to get those kids and take care of them. And it was so bad at the end. This lady gets off the stand, and she walks over to me, and she just starts swearing a blue streak at me in the middle of trial, right? Because of what I had just done to her. And I knew at that point we won. Okay, there was nothing else that needed to be done. I could have just not said another word, and we would have won the case at that point. But we went on. So I think as a particular case, that was my favorite, because the other attorney had literally pulled out all the stops, told his client to lie, instructed her to lie to me, and none of it mattered. I was still able to just absolutely take her apart during trial. And that's my favorite particular trial moment that I still think about.
Viscerally satisfying.
Yeah. Oh, it was incredibly satisfying in every way. So that's the particular example. And then the more generalized example of what I'm really proud of is what we've created here, which is something that's gone beyond me. Because in the beginning, it was literally all me. And I'm a very good attorney. God made me to be an attorney. But in order to help the number of people that we want to help, and to do the things we want to do, and for me to take care of my team, my attorneys, everybody who works for me, we need to help a lot of people. So I've been able to kind of get beyond myself and teach the attorneys and lead the law firm, tell them, hey, look, this is how we take care of clients. We don't overbill them. We don't do these things. So we teach the ethical side of it, and then to teach the particular skill side as well. Like, this is how we negotiate. This is how we sell to other attorneys. This is how we sell to judges. This is how we argue, and just make this much more of an actual legal enterprise than just me getting out and lawyering every day. And that is, like you said, not intuitive. I mean, maybe it's intuitive for some people. It certainly wasn't intuitive for me. So I've spent thousands and thousands of hours figuring out how to do that and how to be effective at it, so I can lead the law firm to help the people that we need to help.
Gotcha. No, that makes perfect sense. Let me ask you this, and again, you can answer this as generally or as non-generally as possible. I talk to a lot of attorneys in a lot of different fields, and one of the things I'm always fascinated by is what's the hardest thing they have to put up with. I've talked to criminal attorneys, and they would never stop doing what they're doing, but sometimes they know they're doing their best to get someone who's guilty a reduced sentence and they don't feel great about it sometimes. I've talked to people who are defense attorneys for major corporations, and they wind up winning these multi-million-dollar settlements for their clients, or they defending them or whatnot, and then they realize that there's still people that were hurt that they didn't get a chance to help. Is there a part of your job that is really hard for you, that frustrates you? What's the part of your job that's the hardest or that weighs the most on you? And then on the other shoe on the other foot, what is the part that is, again, the lightest or the best? What's the best part of what you do?
So I think the toughest part was back in the early days when I needed money. And when you're desperate and you need money, then you will take cases that you probably wouldn't otherwise take. And you would take clients that you wouldn't otherwise take and make arguments, that are necessary to help your client. But you're like, I don't know if I'm actually doing the right thing here. Am I doing right by these kids by getting my client a whole bunch of time with them? So that was really hard in the beginning. And I think that's probably what weighs on me most, is really like, am I doing the best I can for the kids in this situation? Because I want to do well by my client who's an adult. I care about the kids. I want to minimize the damage to them, right?
Yeah.
And we're able to do that, but in the beginning it was tough, and probably took cases and made arguments that I was somewhat uncomfortable with. But the nice thing about, every attorney has to do this. Every attorney has to do this. But the nice thing about growing and charging what we charge is that we have money now, and I can tell people, no, look, I'm not helping you do this. I don't agree with this. I don't think this is best for your kids, and I don't need your money to survive and to thrive. So now we get to be much more selective with the people we help, and ensure as best we can, because there are always going to be mistakes, but ensure the best we can that we're helping them and we're helping the kids, and to minimize the damage for the kids, which is also one of the reasons that we've created the system that we have, where we try not to litigate it. We try not to get into court and air dirty laundry and punch each other in the face. Like, we want to get into mediation. We want to get these things negotiated, because it ratchets down the temperature and it helps people move on without spending, tens and tens of thousands of dollars, taking 2 years and messing their kids up emotionally. I just don't agree with that model. I mean, sometimes it has to happen. Like, we have to go in and punch people in the face and break their nose, but that almost never has to happen. We've created a system in which we can minimize that and minimize damage to kids. And that, I think, is one of the thing I like the most, is that we've been able to create that. And we've been able to create it because I've figured out the business of law side. So I'm not always chasing money from people. I'm able to be selective and to do things as I want, to help families the best I can, and to minimize that damage.
Gotcha. I just had another thought and I just lost it. Every so often the train goes off the tracks. That's just how it is.
Oh, you're fine. It always happens in these interviews. It's okay.
I was gonna ask you something about that, and I don't remember what it was. Well, I might come back to it if it pops into my head. But it was going down a rabbit hole of thought. Well, let me ask you this. I know that one of the things very common to have on a website, I don't see one on yours right now, but you see it on all websites, is an FAQ page, a frequently asked questions.
Yeah, we have.
And one of the things I often tell my clients they should do is have an SAQ, or a should ask question. So I'm sure that there's a lot of clients that come to you with assumptions about what's going to happen or how law works. What's the biggest misassumption or common myth that people come to you thinking that they're going to experience? If you could disabuse people of their biggest, I can't come up with a word for all of a sudden brain no word good.
Yeah,
but
you
know what I'm saying.
I get
where I'm going with that.
So I think this breaks down along sex lines, right? Male, female lines, that men come in and they think that they're going to get screwed in the divorce process, like utterly screwed, not going to get time with their kids. They're going to pay out all this money, so on and so forth.
Isn't that statistically true?
It is not statistically true. That's the thing. So when you look at the stats on the money side, men tend to do better in divorce and after divorce than women do. And then when it comes to, and there's a I wish I could remember the title of this, but there's some work done by a Stanford professor on this that's been replicated by other findings of other professors as well when they look at this. And it's true in my practice too, that men just tend to do better economically afterward. Now, men that stay married do better than men that get divorced, but males tend to do better than females out during and after the divorce when it comes to money. So on the kid side, it is true that women usually get the majority of parent time with the children. Okay. And I want to say the split's like an 80-20 now. 80% of women get more time with the kids than men do. Here's the thing. And this goes back to my original point, is that men believe that the system is rigged against them and they're going to get screwed on all these fronts. It's just inaccurate. Okay. It might happen in individual cases, and I never tell people that it doesn't happen in individual cases. In fact, here in Utah, we actually had a commissioner who hated men and would never give them their fair shake. Thankfully, they fired him a long time ago. He was a horrible human being that ruined lives, and I'm glad he's gone. Okay.
It's interesting that he was a man.
Yep. I don't know what the deal was, but it was very, very obvious. And we all knew it.
Or...
I don't know. And you just had to tell your client, like, look, this is going to happen. And he's a commissioner, so we can go to a judge, and we're going to have to appeal him every decision he makes. We're going to have to go to a judge on this, and it's going to cost you more money, and that's terrible. We got rid of him. And now I just don't sense that. I don't sense that from anybody on the bench anymore. What happens, though, is that men come in and they have this idea in their head because they've been told this, that they've been sold a story by other law firms that want to create this kind of sex war in order for men to hire them. So they believe this narrative, this story, and they come in and I have to disabuse them of this narrative, right? I have to tell them, no, we can get you 50-50 with your kids, right? If you're a good father, you were involved in your kids' lives, we're going to do everything possible for you and to get you 50-50. Now, what happens most of the time, I'm just going to be totally upfront about this, is guys will say this, and then we will get in the process, we'll go to negotiation, we'll do all these things, and their wife will say, no, I don't want to have 50-50. And we say, look, I can very likely get you 50-50 here. You're going to have to go through this elongated process in order to get there. And most guys just don't want to do it. I think they compromise and they say, well, 40% is okay. 35% of overnights with my kids is okay. And they make that choice, even though we're telling them, no, man, I can get this for you. We just have to go through this. It's going to cost you this much money. It's going to take you this much time. They kind of capitulate. And that's unfortunate, right? But they're adults and they get to make that decision. So we allow that to happen. So when it comes to men, that's really what we fight against when they come in to talk to us. And then when it comes to women, many of them tend to believe that they are entitled to most of the time with the kids, which they are not, and we have to disabuse them of that notion as well. And then many of them will come in with these very, very weird ideas about money in divorce and alimony because they've talked with their sister's cousin's friend about what happened in their divorce, which never actually happened. Or, they leave out tremendous amounts of facts. So they come in and they say, well, I want this, and this to happen. And you just have to say, okay, I understand that is exactly what you want. I get that. And if you want me to argue that, I will. Now let's think slightly more realistically about how a judge is going to see this, right? And then we have to tell them what our experience says. And the fact that we've helped over 4,000 people through this process, like what's realistic, because you can always find an attorney who's going to lie to you and take your money. Not lie to you. It's probably being a little harsh.
Mislead.
You can always find an attorney who's going to tell you what you want to hear and take your money and not get it for you. That's not the game I play. I don't do that sort of stuff. I need to be able to sleep with myself at night. I need to be able to know that I've given my clients excellent value and worked hard for them. So we're always super honest about where we think things are and what we think their case is actually, how we think their case is actually going to pan out. And we do that from the very beginning. So we're sitting there, we're talking with them, and we're helping them understand what is realistically going to happen in their case from the start.
Gotcha. Okay. I mean, I guess again that goes along with why people are choosing you. 4,000 clients, then that's over the course of 12 years. I was trying to do the math in my head. My brain wasn't quite doing that, but that averages to quite a few clients per year. Something like 300.
A lot
in
of
fact,
people.
It's actually 333, which is a number that keeps repeating for some
Oh, that's
reason.
funny.
333 clients per year on average. So that's roughly a client a day that you guys are handling. And I'm sure that was slower at the beginning and faster at the end. So it's probably much higher than that in reality. But
and of course, for the hyper technical people out there, it's an estimate. Okay,
yeah,
it's an estimate.
oh,
so.
I'm sure.
Don't get mad at me.
Related to estimates of how many customers you see, would you say that your average client tends to be male or female? Do you deal with more fathers, more mothers?
It's about a
husbands,
50-50 split.
Or is it about 50-50?
It's about a 50-50 split. So back when I was doing everything the first 5-6 years, it was about a 70-30 split. So more females than males. And that was probably because I was better able to relate and communicate to female potential clients and sell them better, right? To sell our services and the value of what we did better to them. But as I've matured and as we've matured as a law firm, it's really a 50-50 split. And like I said, you can go other places. There are men's rights law firms that just help men. There are a lot of places that help mainly women. And what they do to do that is they're selling this kind of sex war, right? And I just won't do that. I don't believe in that. I don't believe that's accurate, factually accurate. I don't believe it's good for us as a society to pit males and females against each other in this kind of war footing, right? We don't need to do that in divorce because it's already hard enough. We don't have to fake these stories to people to get them to hire us and pay us a whole bunch of money. It's just, I find it reprehensible that people do that sort of thing. So right along 50% men, 50% women, we're going to make the best arguments for everybody that comes in the door and needs help.
Gotcha. Do you notice, do you have, when the clients come in, I'm assuming do you have male and female attorneys on staff? And if so, do you find that men prefer to work with male attorneys, women prefer to work with female? Like my gut says that's probably the way it would break, but does it matter? Do people really just say, I want the best attorney?
Yeah, so we have about half. I think right now we actually have half and half. So we have half female attorneys and half male attorneys. Every once in a while, you will get a male attorney, somebody of whichever sex that will want their attorney to be like a man or a woman. Really, it's specific to the case. So most of the time, actually, it's a female that wants to pick the gender of their attorney. Often because I'll say, okay, I think I'm gonna give you to so and so, and she's a female attorney. She says, no, I think my husband will actually better relate to a male attorney. If I have a male attorney, like that authority figure, I think he will relate better to them than he would to a female attorney on the other side. So then I'll think, oh, okay, do I want to do that? Does that make sense? Who would work best in this case? So most of the time it's that kind of consideration. It's almost never because a woman or a man comes in and says, yeah, I don't want somebody of the opposite sex being my attorney. Like if that's what they do, I'm going to fire them anyway, because I don't play that game. But strategically, we do have to make that assessment every so often based on how the other person is going to react to us as the attorney.
Gotcha. That's fascinating. That was me just shooting from the hip with the question that kind of popped in my head. I'm like, yeah, I'm kind of curious how that breaks. So it's good to know.
It almost makes no difference whatsoever. Yeah.
Well, I guess
not
that's
to our
good to know.
clients at least.
No, that's good to know. I appreciate the time you've given us, and I don't want to take up too much of your day, so I'm going to probably wrap this interview up here in a minute. I will be handing you my magic pen. My longtime listeners know. I've actually upgraded. This is actually one of my favorite pens to work with. It's a Papermate Inkjoy 4-color pen. I'm not sponsored by Papermate. I just really like their pens, and if I could write with one pen for the rest of my life, it would be this one. But this particular pen is magical. This particular pen allows you not only to travel through time and give your younger self advice like, hey, buy a lot of Bitcoin, but also it allows you to change laws. You can, with this pen, when I give it to you here in a minute, you'll be able to make a change to a law, or strike a law from the books, or add a law that you think needs to be there. This could be a big law that affects half the country or more. It could be a tiny little law that just makes you have to fill out forms in triplicate 3 times a week, or anywhere in between. So think about that for a minute, and I'll hand you that pen here momentarily. But before we do that, we're going to jump back over and take a look at your websites. Again, websites links are down below. UT Divorce Attorney right now is the law firm's website for Brown Family Law. They will be setting up brownfamilylaw.com, kind of a bare bones site right now, but they'll be fleshing that out in the future. Link to that one will also be down below. I imagine both of them will work indefinitely, I would assume. So feel free, if you're watching this in 10 years, they probably both work, but if one doesn't, go to the other. I'm going to jump over and read from a couple of our sponsors here. Our first sponsor is actually Lunch Break Workshop. Lunch Break Workshop offers free training in 1 hour that you can watch during your lunch break to leverage and grow your business or your practice. The webinar focuses on teaching you how to leverage your business's brand to get new clients or new customers, which is something that Marco seems like he's done very, very well. And includes simple secret hacks that can literally triple the number of customers your website brings to you, etc. For instance, did you know that Google actually pays attention to reviews, and reviews play a very powerful role in local SEO. On this webinar, you're going to learn multiple insights that will help you grow your firm or your business, all done in under an hour so you can consume the content over your lunch break. It's not a sales webinar, and there's nothing to buy when you learn the strategies and techniques taught in the webinar. Visit lunchbreakworkshop.com to register today. Again, that's lunchbreakworkshop.com. They've had webinars on traffic, and I believe you can still watch that one if you go to lunchbreakworkshop.com/traffic, learn how to use paid ads to generate new business. But the current webinar, I believe, focuses on leveraging your company's business. Again, that is lunchbreakworkshop.com. And lastly, Injury Attorney Leads. If you are an injury attorney, you know that finding new clients can be difficult and expensive. Most lead companies charge between $200 and $500 per lead for a lead that simply fill out a form and then they're gone. At that point, it's up to you to verify the information is even correct, chase them down and get them on the phone. Oftentimes, it can take 10 or more leads in order to get an actual client, which is very expensive. The solution is injuryattorneyleads.com. Injuryattorneyleads.com works on an individual basis with their injury attorney clients to target their ideal clients through innovative means like YouTube ads. Once they fill out the form, which is where many of the lead companies stop, Injury Attorney Leads re-verifies their information and then books them for a consult with your law firm. That means that the individuals they send to you are generally going to be guaranteed to be people that have been in an accident and who want to talk to an attorney about their case. The potential clients meet your criteria for a qualified lead, and close rates are usually above 60%. Set up a time to talk with a client generation specialist by visiting injuryattorneyleads.com and scheduling a time to talk. That's injuryattorneyleads.com. All right. So magical pen time. We're gonna take a trip through time first off, and we're gonna go back and see young Marco. This could be young Marco freshly dropping out of high school, getting his GED, heading off to college. This could be young Marco 10, 12 years ago, starting his firm. Obviously, one of the answers I'm sure you give yourself is build some business acumen. But if you could give yourself one other piece of advice, other than, of course, buy a lot of Bitcoin, what piece of advice would you give yourself? And of course, by extension, any other attorney starting out in their practice of law.
Yeah. Learn how to get paid 100% for the work you do. I preach this gospel a ton because it changed my life and my law firm. Like I said, I was getting paid about 50 cents on the dollar maybe, and I was not doing well. Then I decided in 2015 that I was going to change some things, because if I didn't, I was going to die when I was 60. Like, I knew I was going to die of a heart attack when I was 60 years old. And then I decided, and then I thought, what can I change? What is because there were so many things to change that it was overwhelming. So I thought, all right, why don't I do this? Why don't I change the one thing that I think is probably going to change a whole bunch of different things, like downhill? And it was, why don't you get paid 100% for the work you're doing, since you have to do anything like that, you can just collect on your bills. So I did set up a system in which we get paid. We get paid at about 98% rate.
Wow.
And Yep. And I spent a lot of time implementing this and then really, really watching it and refining it. And that changed my life in a number of different ways. It changed my money, it changed my spirit, it changed how we do business, it changed the number of people that I could help, it changed my team, and then the money I could pay them, my ability to send my son to private school. So it just changed literally everything in my life. And that is the one thing I would tell law students coming out or lawyers that are on their own struggling, because I know hundreds of them and probably over 1,000 now. They struggle with this getting paid thing, and they just don't realize how different their life is if they go from 60% to 100%, right? That changes their life completely. So that's the first thing, is to get paid 100% for the work you do.
That's a good piece of advice. And that's one that I know as an entrepreneur myself, I've struggled with in the past. Now I always get the credit card number up front. Problem solved.
That's right.
That's probably the number one solution I found, is just get them up front and you take care of the billing for them. Don't worry. Don't even let them write a check and say, you know what, I'll take care of it for you once you hand me that card. That's awesome. So let me ask you this then. Magic pen time again. Blue is for editing laws, red is for striking from the books, and black is for adding new ones. What are you going to change in the law? Again, it can be a big law, it can be a little law, one that affects just you, one that affects your clients, one that affects the country. What are you going to change, Marco?
I am not arrogant enough to think that I have the wherewithal or the knowledge to change a law that will actually change the country. So I'm not going to do that. So I'm going to stay within my area of expertise. Okay.
Fair enough.
Which is a divorce. And what I would do is blue. I would modify laws. I would modify in all 50 states, but probably not. I'll just stick to Utah. So in Utah, we have a no-fault state. So it's irreconcilable differences. And when it comes to adultery, like actual, emotional sexual adultery that ends in the dissolution of a marriage and the divorce, the judges here don't really care that much, in the sense that they're not going to punish somebody for that behavior. They're really looking just to dissolve the marriage and let everybody go on. And most of the time, that's fine. I get that. There are some times, though, when you've committed adultery, your spouse was completely committed to you, and you just messed up the works, and you deserve to pay for that. Okay. And your spouse really doesn't deserve to pay you a whole bunch of alimony or this, that, or the other, because you decided that you wanted to engage in this behavior. And this applies to men and it applies to women equally. But I would really strengthen a law to say, look, if you do this, if you commit adultery, if you do these things, then you are actually going to be punished pecuniarily, right? Like with money. There will be some form of punishment, because I think that's deserved in a lot of situations, and it almost never happens. And I just have to tell my clients that. I'm like, look, I know this happened to you. I totally understand where you're coming from. If I had a magic wand, this is what I would, or a magic pen, this is what I would do, but I'm not able to, right? But yeah, if I had my druthers, that's what I would do.
All right. That's an interesting change. I don't think I've ever had anyone suggest that particular change before. So that's kind of neat. Well, again, I want to thank you very much for spending some time with us today, Marco. You've helped me kind of realign a few things I thought about when it comes to family law across the board. And so again, thank you very much for taking time to talk with us. I do always like to let my guests have the last word. So if you could leave our listeners, particularly if there's somebody in Utah or Arizona who's looking for an attorney and they've made it this far into the video, what parting words of wisdom or what advice would you like to leave our listeners with?
Try as hard as you possibly can to save your marriage. Before you come to a guy like me and pay me $10,000, $15,000 to get you through your divorce, which I will gladly take because I'm an attorney. But before you do that, do everything you possibly can to save your marriage. Take that $10,000, $15,000, spend it on your marriage, see if you can't save it. Because I would much rather you not hire me and stay together as a family, if there's any way for that to happen, than for you to pay me that money. And if that doesn't work, then come and I will take care of you, and we will take care of you here. We will maximize the time you get with your kids. We'll maximize your money, but please do everything you possibly can not to end up in my office.
That's great advice. And I always appreciate an attorney who would gladly see themselves out of business if it meant society was fixed. I don't think it's going to go in that direction anytime soon, unfortunately. In fact, I heard a stat the other day that it's like 18% of families are nuclear families today. Like, your traditional married family, mother, father, both at home with kids and whatnot, which I found startling. Like that was just below 1 in 5, just slightly, maybe statistical error, but pretty much below 1 in 5 families is a nuclear family these days. I find that hard to fathom, but the world is the way it is, and you can only work with people one person at a time. So I guess it is what it is, and we can hope, we can pray, and make ourselves better people, and that's about all we have control over. So well, thank you very much for meeting with me, Marco. I do appreciate it. Again, this is the Attorney Post. I've been chatting with Marco Brown of the eponymous law firm Brown Family Law. You can visit him online at utdivorceattorney.com or brownfamilylaw.com. As always, again, links in the description down below. You can also give them a call at 801-685-9999. I believe that they will probably always give you a toll-free consultation, if I'm not mistaken, or at least a free consultation. I don't know if that's a toll-free number or not. 801. Is that an area code in Utah, or is that an 800?
Yeah, 801 is the area code. We don't do free consultations because there's nothing more worthless than free. So we do charge for our consultations, but we're also going to give you real talk and we're not going to talk like lawyers. We're going to give it to you straight. We're going to give you a plan and a strategy for your case moving forward, which nobody really does on a free consultation. So we charge for it.
Gotcha. So call for a consultation. And I apologize. I'm so used to saying free consultation. It came out. I didn't even mean to say it, and then it came out, but call for consultation. Clearly, if you're looking for an attorney who specializes in family law in the Utah area, I think you're going to have a hard time finding better than Marco and his law firm. As always, this podcast, though I've been chatting with Marco about family law, this podcast does not constitute legal advice. And if you do have a legal issue, you should seek the advice of a competent attorney in your area. For instance, Marco and his law firm. So please seek competent legal advice and do not lean on this podcast as though it is legal advice. As always, if you're listening to us on YouTube, we always appreciate a like, a subscribe, a share. Feel free to leave a comment down below as well if you learned something new or something kind of changed your mind. And we also, of course, are on all the major podcast repositories out there: Apple, Stitcher, Spotify, Amazon, Audible, et cetera, et cetera. Please feel free to like, subscribe, share, comment, rate, whatever it is on any of those platforms as well. And until next time, this is Justin West with the Attorney Post, reminding you, if you don't know your rights, you don't have any. Thank you for listening, guys, and until next time.